Hello and welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine Bennis podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today I'll be talking about Season 9, Episode 8, The Betrayal. Hello, everyone. I do hope everyone's doing well out there. This has been a tough week. When I thought about recording this episode earlier this week, I was hoping for a much different vibe. For those of you who may not be noticing the date or listening much later, the election happened on this past Tuesday and really didn't go the way I was hoping. And it was pretty devastating. I don't want to dive into politics. I mean, this is just supposed to be a nice light podcast to listen to some Seinfeld memories and, dig into how Elaine Bennis is the best. So I won't get too deep into it, but for those of you out there who are feeling pretty devastated and hopeless and scared, please know I'm with you and that hope this little old podcast can be a distraction. What I'm finding, it's only been a couple days, but I do need to distract myself every now and then so as not to completely fall apart. And so I hope this can serve as a distraction because we're going to be talking about a really great episode, The Betrayal. It is a fantastic episode. Spoiler alert. I'm giving you what I feel already. I usually don't reveal that until later in the episode, but, big surprise. This was a groundbreaking episode for the series, for all television at that time. And, why don't we just dive right in? The synopsis for The Betrayal is as follows. Jerry, Elaine, George, and George's girlfriend fly to India to attend Sue Ellen Mischke's wedding to an Indian American. Jerry sleeps with George's current girlfriend. Elaine worries that her friend will learn that Elaine slept with her fiancé. Kramer gets into a wishing contest with a hot dog vendor. This episode was written by David Mandel and Peter Melman. Okay, so we start the episode at the end. We even see the credits. We actually start with the Castle Rock logo. They really do it all just in reverse. The still shot with the credits is there. And we get into it. Jerry, George, and Elaine enter Monk's all distraught and exhausted. Elaine's got a huge bandage on the side of her nose. George asks Elaine if she's going to sleep with him or not. She says, considering she just got off a 23-hour flight, she's too exhausted to even vomit at the thought. Okay, he says, I'll ask when you're rested. Oh, I'm sure she'll change her mind, Jerry says. Well, I hope so for your sake, George says. Everyone's just fighting. Jerry tries to apologize and says he's sorry, but George says, you can stuff your sorries in a sack, mister. Kramer enters and he sort of feels the vibe. He can hear them arguing. He asks, what's with them? And George says he doesn't want to talk about it. He asks Jerry, come on, how was the trip? I don't want to talk about it. Asks Elaine what happened to her nose. I don't want to talk about it. Well, you got to give me something. How was the wedding? Was the bride radiant? Elaine says, well, she was. Jerry continues until she found out Elaine slept with the groom. Ooh, Kramer likes this. He says it sounds juicy. But then he has to go to the crapper, but he wants to hear all about it. And Kramer walks away. George tells the group that he didn't go to the bathroom the entire time they were in India. Jerry says, I can't believe we went to India for a wedding. My take, I think this is a great first scene. We start the episode wondering how the heck did they get to this point? Returning from India, George is asking Elaine to sleep with him, and Elaine's got this mysterious nose injury. So in the inside look, David Mandel, one of the writers for this episode, talks about how this episode is based on the play called The Betrayal, just like this episode is called, by Harold Pinter, the playwright. And the play is just like this. It takes place in reverse. And so David Mandel sort of took that structure and he's like, we had to start the episode in this crazy, insane place. And the unraveling throughout the episode to reveal how they got there is what makes, that structure work so well. And it really is amazing. I think they did a great job with establishing how this ends. And you really do wonder, like, well, how the hell did you get to to this place? And like I alluded to earlier, this episode was revolutionary. There was so much hype. I remember this. There were news stories about, oh my goodness, Seinfeld's doing this backwards episode. And there was interviews behind the scenes on like NBC News. I think Katie Couric was back there with them, just, trying to get some scoop. They gave a little bit of a hint what was going on. And there was just so much hype about this episode. I totally remember it. Back to the scene though, I really love JLD's delivery of, I don't want to talk about it. Like she pauses, like just even yelling hurts her nose. It's so brilliant. I love the way she does that. All right, then we move back to one day earlier in India. Ellen Mischke busts out of the door of the Indian temple yelling that the wedding is off. She says to Elaine, "You were my maid of honor and you slept with my Pinter?" And Elaine tries to reassure her, "It was years ago before you met him." And I have to say, it was very mechanical. Elaine turns to George and Jerry. "You idiots, this is all your fault." And George points to Jerry, says it's his fault. He betrayed me. And Jerry again tries to apologize. "I'm sorry." "You can stuff your sorries in a sack, mister." I don't know what that means. George turns to Nina and says, "You have to choose, me or Jerry." And she chooses neither. "Well, why'd you come? Free trip to India." And then she tells George he can take off his boots. "Everyone knows you're 5'6". And he yells after her as she's walking away, 5'8", 5'7". Elaine says to Ellen, see the way they are? But we're still best friends, right?" "No," Ellen says, and she says, "Take that thing out of your nose," grabs Elaine's head and yanks the nose ring out. "Ooh, that's gotta hurt. I don't care where you're from," Jerry says. And George is kind of wriggling around. He's uncomfortable. He says, "When's our flight home? I gotta go to the bathroom." The actress in this scene who plays Nina is Justine Maselli. She was a series regular on NYPD Blue and also appeared in As the World Turns and Judging Amy, among others. I really like her. I think she's so charming in this role, very believable as a possible Elaine replacement, as Jerry says later/earlier in the episode. Nothing particularly comedic about the character, but I think Justine does a really great job playing Nina. The charm is just palpable on screen. She's great. And then my take on the scene, we've gone through a lot of Elaine looks in this series. Remember, guys, back in seasons 1 through 4, I want to say, the wall of hair, kind of the frizzy look. But I have to say, and I recognize as an Indian woman myself, I may be very biased here, but she is so incredibly radiant in her Indian wedding outfit, the sari, the hair, the jewelry, the makeup. It is really flawless. And well, JLD herself agrees. In the Inside Look, she talked about how much she loved wearing all of this. And she even says, "I think this should have been Elaine's look from the get-go." And we have the return of Ellen Mischke. And I love that Brenda Strong is back in this character. And it must be said, she looks incredible as well in her Indian outfit. And so in this scene, we learn the conflict. Apparently, Elaine slept with her fiance, Pinter. And I also love how Elaine thinks that the detail of it being very mechanical matters. Like I can see her bringing up like, "Oh, it was years ago before you met him." That's a very legitimate thing to be like, this shouldn't matter. But she has to add like, "Well, the sex wasn't even that good, so why be upset about it?" It's just so funny. There's a lot of chaos here. We see Jerry and George are fighting as well. Nina chooses neither of them, and she calls out George on heightening. He was heightening Mickey style. And I love the 5'8", 5'7", poor George. And then the nose injury question is solved. Ellen yanks a nose ring out of Elaine's nose. Ouch. All right, next, it's 15 minutes earlier. Ellen Mischke and Pinter are walking down the aisle to what's called the mandap. That is the Indian or Hindu altar. And Elaine is kind of following them as a flower woman, I guess. She stops to sit with Jerry and asks, "What happened last night?" He says, "Ooh, you were pretty loaded." "I know. I woke up with this." And she shows the nose ring. "Oh, hello, tetanus." George and Nina walk in, and George is walking very funny because he has to go to the bathroom. Nina tells him, look, I used the bathroom. It's fine. He says, no, it's 120 degrees. I'll sweat it out. Elaine looks at George and says, are those Timberlands painted black, referring to his boots? He comes back with, is your nose pierced? And they both sort of mentally call that a wash, and neither of them answer the other. Elaine walks away, and George says hello to Jerry. I believe you know Nina. Jerry leans forward and says, we need to talk. Oh, you've done a lot more than talk. And Jerry admits it. Look, I did sleep with Nina, but that's all. That's all. That's everything. I don't know what the rest of it is for anyway. Jerry apologizes, says he's sorry, but again, George tells him to stuff his sorries in a sack. Where'd you get that one? It's an expression. Elaine turns around. She's sitting right in front of the mandap and shushes them. She turns back to the Hindu priest and does the sign of the cross, but then catches herself and kind of, okay, not that, and then puts her hands together in prayer. George then whips back to Jerry and says, they got to settle this. I should sleep with Elaine. That doesn't punish me, Jerry says. It punishes Elaine, and cruelly, I might add. Ugh, funny guy, George yells. Elaine comes over to them and throws flower petals at him. Hey, monkeys, knock it off. My best friend's trying to get married. George tells Elaine that you have to sleep with me. She says, I'm not going to do that. Reparations! She tells George, would you grow up? What's the difference? Nina slept with Jerry. He slept with me. I slept with Pinter. Nobody cares. It's all ancient history. George didn't know this news. He just kind of yells out, you slept with the groom? Everyone in the temple gasps. Elaine slowly turns around to see Pinter and Sue Ellen shocked. My take, I love that exchange with Jerry when she reveals the nose ring and Jerry says, oh, hello, tetanus. Elaine also trying to keep George and Jerry in check, the shushing and then yelling, hey, monkeys. That's all great. And that classic moment when she does that sign of the cross and realizes, oh, that's not right. Some brilliant physicality from JLD. So funny. George blurting it out at the end that Elaine slept with Pinter. It's such a funny reveal. I like how they do that. The direction of the camera where Elaine's like, oh, shit. And then we see both Sue Ellen and Pinter just mouths agape. I have to say, I have to kind of point this out. It really bothers me that Nina is sitting right next to all this arguing that's going on. I mean, George, it takes two to tango here. Why are you only mad at Jerry? I mean, granted, I'm not going to defend what Jerry does. This is a huge betrayal by him. What a shitty thing to do to your best friend. So I'm on George's side here for him being angry at Jerry. But why isn't he also blaming Nina? Why does he still want to be with Nina? How does she get off scot-free? I don't quite understand that. And again, she's sitting right next to him and all this stuff is going on. Why wouldn't she at least say something, defend herself, something? It just makes no sense to me that she's sitting right there and doesn't have any part in the scene. All right, next, we are 4 hours earlier back in New York. And we see this really weird scene where Kramer gets pelted in the face with a snowball. He walks over to his buddy, FDR, and hugs him and thanks him. Okay, now we're even. And FDR tells him, I put a rock in the snowball. Oh, I felt that. Next, we're in Monk's. It's 1 hour earlier. Kramer and FDR pull a wishbone and Kramer gets the short end, which means FDR gets his wish. So he pulls out a cooler. Kramer doesn't quite know what this means. Well, you want my kidney? He opens it and pulls out a snowball. Kramer whimpers, oh, mama. Next, it's the night before in India. Elaine is wasted in Jerry's room, surrounded by small bottles of peach schnapps. She blurts out that George knows you slept with Nina. That's why he's been acting so weird. How did he find out? He schnapped me, she says. Oh, man. Jerry tells her, you know you're not supposed to drink while you're keeping a secret. Elaine's just giggling. He asks, is there something else? I can't tell you. Here, drink this. She takes another shot and tells Jerry to come closer. Kind of indicates for him to get close to her face and then shouts in his ear, I slept with the groom. Pinter? He used to be called Peter. Jerry doesn't think that's a big deal. Who cares? Sue Ellen, if she finds out, she'll call off the wedding. As she's saying this, she's crawling onto the couch with her ass in the air, basically in Jerry's face. And he's like, all right, it's time to go. He grabs Elaine, puts her on his back in like a piggyback style and walks her out to the hallway. She tells him, hey, do you know what Jerry is in Indian? Jugdish. And then in the hallway, she sort of maneuvers herself from Jerry's back to his front. She says, "What if I got my nose pierced? That would be pretty freaky." And she slides down to the floor. He's like, "Yes, I think that's a fine idea." He tells her goodnight and closes the door. She crawls over and opens the sort of shutter slats in his door and says, "Good night, Jagdish," and laughs and laughs. My take. I have a declaration. Drunk Elaine is my favorite Elaine. Yes, it is my declaration. I feel no doubt about this at all in my heart. This is definitely in my top 5 greatest Elaine scenes of the entire series. JLD is a fucking master at acting drunk. I mean, it is just perfection. First, I have to point out, and this is not about her acting, but it adds to it, the messy hair. I mean, what is it with getting drunk and your hair getting messed up? I can totally relate to this. I mean, I look at old college photos, physical photos, because we didn't have camera phones back when I was in college. And it's just like the hair throughout the night. It's just getting worse and more messy. It was such a good touch to have her hair such a disaster. When she's giggling because she has more stuff to tell Jerry, I love that moment. She's just like all scrunched up, like hee 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 hee. Oh, it's so great. I mean, it's all fantastic, especially the physical stuff. I could watch this scene over and over. It is the perfect example of how to act drunk. Seriously, it's not an easy thing. But before I get into that, the impressiveness of JLD moving from Jerry's back to the front. What a move, okay? I mean, it's kind of sexy, no? Like, it's like, whoa, JLD's got some skills. It helps being a tiny woman like that. I don't think I could do that. I would look like a fucking, like, weirdo spider woman doing it. But, and plus I don't even think I have the strength to do that. But yeah, good on you, JLD. Very good move. And then the laughing at the end of the scene after she says, "Good night, Jagdish." Perfection, perfection. So anyway, back to JLD's drunk portrayal. This is just her shining as a comedic actress. Drunk is not an easy thing to pull off. Like I was saying, people will do the stereotypical thing they've sort of seen in other kind of more broad comedies of drunk people, you know, slurring your words and stumbling around. But to me, this is way more believable. She's at that level of drunk where she's not falling down drunk, right? She's at the level, she's playing the level where you have like more energy and you're louder and you're chattier and you have the faculties to like do a move like she does with moving from Jerry's back to the front. Like she's not falling down drunk. She's at this other level where she's pretty drunk. She's going to be hungover the next day. But I think so often we see people just slurring, you know, and falling over. But I love this level of drunk. It's not easy to do. And no surprise, JLD nails it. All right, next, it's 1 hour earlier in India. Jerry is handing Elaine her first drink in his room and says, "Bless you." "Oh, thank you." 3 seconds earlier, it's because Elaine sneezes. My take, it's, you know, nothing really to talk about here, but we see how put together she is just an hour earlier. So it's a nice contrast. The hair is perfect, not all fucked up. All right, next, it's 2 hours earlier in New York. Kramer approaches FDR's hot dog stand and gets a hot dog. And he says, "These things will kill you, but that doesn't matter because you're already going to drop dead." Well, Kramer says to FDR, "Well, guess what? I made a wish on a shooting star last night to wish against your wish for me to drop dead." Well, as it happens, FDR saw the same star and double wished him to drop dead. He gives Kramer his change, and, well, there's a fountain right there. So Kramer says, "I'm triple wishing," and throws a coin into the fountain. "I'm quadruple wishing," FDR says. And then they start pulling out their lashes and wishing against each other. Next, it's 3 hours earlier in the Indian airport. Jerry, Elaine, George, and Nina enter. It's very hot and apparently stinky, the stench of death. Nina asks George about his boots. "You know, you've been wearing them since I met you. You're not going to wear them to the wedding, are you?" "No," he says, "I'm going to wear black shoes." Elaine sees Sue Ellen in the airport and gets so excited. She's like, "Oh, yeah, she didn't want me to come, but here I am with a bunch of my idiot friends. This is going to be great," Jerry says. Then Sue Ellen sees Elaine and she is so excited she's there. "You are?" Elaine says. "Well, of course. No one was willing to come to India, not even Pinter's parents, and they're Indian." Elaine is so confused and she lays out the reasons they hate each other. She's tall, she doesn't wear a bra. Sue Ellen sort of softens and says, "You know what? I know we've had our issues, but now she wants Elaine to be her maid of honor and her best friend." Elaine flips instantly. "All right, I guess." Pinter walks up and Sue Ellen introduces him to everyone. Elaine says, "Oh, Peter." No, it's Pinter." Oh, something's going on there because Elaine and Pinter avoid eye contact. Sue Ellen asks if anyone wants to use the bathroom, and George says, nope, let's just get going. He walks past Jerry, kind of bumping him. "Watch it, funny man." Jerry asks Elaine before they walk away why George is acting so strange. Elaine fumbles her answer. "What? No, strange. I'm not strange, no." Jerry knows she's keeping a secret and says, "Oh, look what they had on the plane. Schnapps." Uh-oh. My take. So here we have their arrival to India, which is apparently super hazy and stinky. Now in this scene, I don't want to admit this is true, but since I've sort of been there, I have to say it is so genius to have Elaine flip so easily about her feelings for Sue Ellen Mischke. Now look, I am speaking as a former seeker of validation from all those, especially girls who I would put on these false pedestals. So I get this. If the girls who bullied me in junior high did this, if they asked me to be their best friend, I would have said yes in a heartbeat. Well, not to get too into my trauma, but they did do this only to psych me the next day. Those of you who are around my age, Gen X, you remember psyching? It's basically just pranking someone into believing something and then going psych and then humiliating them. So yeah, that did happen to me where they acted like my friends for a full day at school. I came to school the next day and they all ignored me and said psych. Anyway, well, we won't go into that. So that mentality, because it's like you need, for whatever reason, even though they're such assholes, you want their approval. You want to be validated by them. And I wish this ended. I wish I could say this ended when I was, out of junior high or high school, but I'm not proud to report this. Well, this went on well into my 30s, but I woke up in my 40s. Hell yeah. And bullies don't go away in adulthood, by the way. Oh gosh, so much sunshine I'm bringing to this podcast. Anyway, this is all to say, I think this is such a true to life thing that we as women mostly, and maybe men, I don't want to generalize, but as a woman, I just think we secretly always want that approval from our rivals, from our bullies, from our abusers. Like, if they give you a little bit, we get so happy about it. And the way even she says it, she's like, all right, I guess. Like she's genuinely glad. Like this is what she's wanted all along, to be Sue Ellen Mischke's best friend. I love the line, "a bunch of my idiot friends." It's a great line. Love JLD's delivery. And I love also how Elaine points out the reasons they hate each other, which are basically, you're tall, you don't wear a bra. We hate each other. Very funny. And here we're sort of clued into Elaine and Pinter having a past together. That awkwardness is very well played. Okay, next, it's the night before in New York on a rooftop. Kramer is staring up at the sky. He sees a shooting star and yells, "I wish I don't drop dead." And someone in the distance tells him to shut up. "You shut up. Drop dead." Next, we're on a plane 5 hours earlier between New York and India. George is up at Jerry's seat, just chatting with him, and says, "Are you enjoying the flight?" "Coach to India, only way to go." It's a good one. "You're very funny. Very funny, Jerry. Jerry Seinfeld's a funny guy." Jerry's like, "Are you all right?" He says, "Of course. I'm here with my girl, Nina. And what better way to pass the time than gabbing with my best friend, with whom there are no secrets. Like this, since the 4th grade. Hey, didn't I beat you up in 4th grade?" Wrong thing to say to George at that moment. "Funny guy, right here." Elaine and Nina are further back in the plane, and Nina asks Elaine, "Hey, you didn't tell George about me and Jerry, did you?" "No, it's in the vault," Elaine says. And they hear George off in the distance, off camera, saying, "Jerry Seinfeld's a funny guy." My take, Elaine's just in this for a few seconds, but we see her lying to Nina about George. And why? Okay, I also have to point out, why would George still allow Nina to come on this trip? He finds out the previous day what happened. Again, why is she not held accountable for any of this? It makes no sense. All right, next, we're still on the plane, but it's an hour earlier. Jerry is walking past Elaine and she asks him what time it is. You asked me that 2 minutes ago. Then it's 2 minutes ago. Elaine is at Jerry's seat asking him what time it is, and he says, oh, I didn't wear a watch. Then she points out a tooth and asks if it's chipped. He says, yeah, how did that happen? I have no idea, she says. My take, I like this interaction with Jerry because it's, the whole thing is to set up the next scene, which takes place the day before. It's very well done. So speaking of that, the day before, we are at Monk's. Elaine and George are at a booth, and she's got a pint of peach schnapps in her mouth and swings it back, just holding it with her teeth. And that's how that tooth got chipped. When she puts it back down on the table, she goes, oh, God. So Jerry and Nina, huh? George says, She tells them, I'm not going to tell you any more things. You already told me everything. Okie dokie. My take, we get another Elaine drunk scene. What more could I ask for? Probably another one, I guess. But yeah, I love this one just as much as the previous one. What more can you say? It's just perfection. Every line delivery is great. And that last moment always gets me, the okie dokie. And then she just shuts her eyes. It's so funny. Drunk Elaine is my favorite. If we could get Drunk Elaine in a sari, I'm not sure the world actually could handle that much incredible Elaine power. All right, next, it's 30 minutes earlier in Newman's apartment. Kramer is telling him how they had a deal and you were supposed to give me your birthday wish and you wasted it. Newman has a beautiful woman sitting on his knee. Oh, did I? She tells him, Newman, I'm bored. Does your girlfriend have to be here? Kramer asks. Newman retorts with, does yours? And we pan over and see Jerry sitting there. And he tells them that he's only there because of George. Come on, you got to help me out. What am I going to do about FDR? Kramer says. And the beautiful woman says, why don't you just make another wish? And how am I going to do that? Toots. What about a shooting star? Oh, that's perfect, Kramer says. Beauty and brains. Newman and the woman nuzzle together. Jerry is so grossed out. Ugh, he's a postman, don't you? The actress in this scene is Jocelyn Kelly. She plays the model. She doesn't have a ton of credits or really online presence, but I think she's enjoyable as the model. Her little tood to Kramer in this scene is really funny. And yeah, I think she does this really well. Very, very seductive and looks like a model. All right, next, it's 15 minutes earlier in Jerry's apartment. Elaine is handing out plane tickets. She gives one to Jerry, tells him how Sue Ellen sent her a wedding invitation 1 week before her wedding in India. I'll show her. By flying halfway around the world, spite never sleeps, she says. Yeah, especially when you have a layover in Sarajevo. Jerry's not very thrilled with the itinerary. George enters, excited to tell Jerry about something, but Elaine interrupts. She tells him he's going to India with them. For how long? 3 days. Great. He turns back to Jerry and tells him how he had the best date with that Nina. I think I'm in love with her already. He hugs Jerry. You are a great friend. Great, great friend. Elaine kind of leans in and gives Jerry this look like, holy shit. Jerry avoids responding to George. He's feeling very awkward. Kramer enters and he's like, hey, you want to come in and eat something? Elaine offers Kramer a ticket to India, but he says he can't. I'm going to drop dead. George is excited. Well, Nina can go. Jerry, you and Elaine, me and Nina. Kramer is exiting and Jerry says he's going to go with him. Well, I'm going to Newman's. Great, I love Newman. And he exits. George notices something's off and he asks Elaine, does Jerry seem a little strange every time I mention Nina? Well, Elaine flubs her answer again with, Nina? No, not strange, Nina. Why do you keep saying Nina? I don't know, Nina. Nina! And she goes to exit, says, I'm going to grab a bite. Yeah, I'll join you. Elaine exits and George goes to the cabinets. Cereal. Peach schnapps. My take, we get spiteful Elaine here. I love the spite never sleeps. Of course, this makes no sense. If Sue Ellen just wanted a gift, 4 tickets to India in 1997 probably set Elaine back, I'm thinking $6,000 to $7,000, but apparently spite is more important. That's just how these people operate. JLD is a master once again. Of course, I've mentioned my undying love for Drunk Elaine, but secret keeping Elaine is also so funny. The way she keeps saying Nina and delivering that, covering up a secret. It's so good. So good. And I also love that touch of George. Cereal, peach schnapps. You got to wade, in Jerry's place, you got to wade through cereal to find anything, I bet. All right, next, it's 30 minutes earlier on the street next to a porta potty. Kramer is getting impatient, waiting for Lomez, who must be loafing down in that porta-john. He says, we're going to be late for the movie. Then he notices a car pull up, a really nice car, with a beautiful woman driving. And Newman's in the passenger seat telling her all about mail. And she couldn't be more fascinated. I could listen to you talk about mail all day. Kramer figures out that Newman wasted his wish. And he calls after him and tells Lomez he's leaving. Next, it's one day earlier. We're at Newman's birthday party, and he's being sung to by all his male pals. He's about to blow out the candles when Kramer busts in, and he's like, well, geez, thanks for inviting me to your birthday. He goes, I did. The invitation must have gotten lost in the mail. Everyone loses it. All the mail carriers think that is just the funniest thing ever. Kramer needs his wish to protect him from FDR, and Newman refuses at first because he's been on this incredible hot streak with his birthday wishes. But they haggle and they make a deal, thinking the other one was a sucker. Newman goes to make his wish on behalf of Kramer, but then he spots the model on his Vogue magazine cover, and we can see that he's changed his mind before blowing out the candles. All right, next, it's one day earlier in Jerry's apartment. He exits his bedroom with a big smile on his face. Elaine enters all pissed off about the Mischke mishmash. She says, I talked to the groom's parents and it's so obvious that they don't want me to go. It's clear she invited me just to get a gift. And Jerry the whole time is trying to get her out of the apartment. And then we hear a female voice from the bedroom. Turns out it's Nina. It gets pretty awkward pretty fast. They all say hi and Nina exits uncomfortably. Who else you got back there? Elaine asks. Jerry explains it was an awkward moment in the conversation. It never happened before. Elaine's like, you slept with Nina. What are you going to tell George? Jerry says nothing. He's not going to tell him. It'll crush him. He tells Elaine she can't tell him either. And she's like, fine, I'll put it in the vault. No good. Too many people know the combination. What combination? Jerry makes a little drinking gesture. She says, don't be ridiculous. Then Jerry goes to his drawer and finds it's full of Fruit Loops and milk. My take, I think there's like really funny physicality with both Elaine and Jerry here. I love that sort of mutual squat they do together as he's trying to get her out of the apartment. Nina and Elaine's awkward interaction, very well done. I enjoyed this like known fact about Elaine with the guys that getting Elaine drunk just opens her vault. And how she's like in denial about it. She's like, oh, give me a break. But it's very true. And I love the fact that it's peach schnapps that is like her downfall. This is an example about how specificity makes it funnier. And I did think about how Hennigan's was usually the alcohol that they mentioned in this show. But, you know, Elaine needed a different drink. And I'm glad that they went this way. And after all, we know that she likes peach. So it makes total sense. She likes peach schnapps. All right, next, it's 30 minutes earlier. Kramer is reading the paper in Jerry's apartment while pouring milk into his Fruit Loops, and it overflows. We hear Jerry call out from his bedroom while he's having sex with Nina, because that's where he is at this point. 30 minutes earlier. Very weird. He says, is someone out there? Kramer freaks out and he spills the cereal everywhere. He panics and swipes the mess into the drawer, which is how the Fruit Loops and milk get into Jerry's drawer. Oh, just the thought of having to clean that out of a drawer. Oh, gross. Okay, next, it's 1 hour earlier. We're at the Ranawat's apartment, Pinter's parents. Elaine is there and meets Usha and Zubin. They strongly dissuade her from going to India. Usha says how it's a dreadful, dreadful place. Zubin points out how it still has the plague. I mean, come on, the plague. Usha hands over the registry to Elaine. She says, get them a gift and be thankful you did not go. Elaine knows what's going on. Don't go, send a gift. Yeah, I think I got it. On her way out, Zubin says, if I were to go to India, I wouldn't use the bathroom the entire trip. That's fantastic. Elaine walks out and he says after her that he's not too crazy about Manhattan either. The actress in this scene is Noor Sheikh. She plays Pinter's mother, Usha. Not a lot of credits to her name, doesn't seem to be acting anymore, but I think she plays this part very well. I like that she's actually Indian. Sometimes that does not happen. Pinter is played by an Iranian guy, by the way. And I can totally see her as one of the Indian aunties I grew up with, so she does a great job. My take here, I've been putting this off for the episode, but I'm going to address this because I feel I have to. The blatant India bashing in this episode, it bothered me back in 1997 when it first aired, and it still bothers me today. And I'm in complete acceptance of my bias here. I recognize it, but as much as I love this show, I wish they didn't choose to punch down and insult this country. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are many things about India that would be a culture shock to most Americans. I'm not denying that. I'm not sitting here saying that they can't acknowledge some of that, but there are just a lot of unnecessary insults about the country, like things that you can bring up, I think, that are fair. Heat, humidity, the shock of seeing cows in the street, because that does happen. You're in a big city, but there are cows there. Of course, totally fair. But calling it stinky, calling it dreadful, the bathroom stuff, it just doesn't really add to the comedy, in my opinion. I don't think it's funny to laugh at a country or a person or a community. And it's kind of surprising, I have to say. I think David Mandel and Peter Melman are incredibly talented writers, and Seinfeld as a whole has always been pretty deft with how they construct their comedy. And it's always been more intelligent, except for I will say, the fat jokes about Newman, stupid. But not here. I just don't think it's done really well here. And it's not about like, being sensitive about India. It's like, it's just about the intelligence of comedy. You're sort of reducing a whole country and basically saying it's dreadful. And, if we're going to put it in other terms, maybe a shithole country or a floating island of garbage. It's just really bad taste in my book. And I didn't enjoy it then, like I said, and I still don't enjoy it today. And okay, I'm done. Soapbox has been put away. Related to that, I do think Zubin saying the last line about how he's not so crazy about Manhattan, I feel like that was added at the last minute to offset the India bashing, but it really doesn't do that much. Next, we are in Jerry's apartment. It's 30 minutes earlier. Nina is over having coffee with Jerry, asking about George, and Jerry tells her to make sure she mentions how the waiter likes him. Really? Believe me. He says, I forgot how much fun it is hanging out with you. I know, she says. We've never had a bad conversation. Yeah, there's no awkward pauses. Probably why we never fooled around. And then what happens? An awkward pause, and then they start going at it on his counter. Next, it's one day earlier in FDR's apartment. Kramer's at his door, and FDR is so pissed. Are you dense? I said I wanted you to drop dead. Now drop dead. And he slams the door. Kramer says, I knew it, stupid Jerry. 10 minutes earlier at Jerry's apartment, Jerry says to Kramer that he knows what he's talking about. There's no way FDR wants you to drop dead. And ask him again, and he slams the door. 10 minutes before that at FDR's apartment, FDR says, my birthday wish was for you to drop dead. But why? I have my reasons, FDR says. Wait. Kramer points out, if you say a birthday wish out loud, it doesn't come true. That's just a silly superstition, and he slams the door. And then 10 minutes earlier, we're in Jerry's apartment. Kramer tells Jerry and George how FDR wants him to drop dead. George doesn't know who this is. FDR? Yeah, Franklin Delano Romanowski. He was at his birthday party, and just as he was about to blow out the candles, he gives me this look. Stink eye? Crook eye? Kramer says, no, evil eye. Kramer is freaking out. He can't have this bad mojo. Elaine enters as he exits, and she says, you're not going to believe what I got in the mail. An invitation to sue Ellen Mischke's wedding. Well, at least the wedding gown will give her some support. She says, not the point. The wedding is in 1 week, and I got this today. So you think it's a non-invite. Elaine says, it's an invitation. She looks over at George and asks if he's getting taller, and he lifts up his foot. No, Timberlands. Elaine looks at the invite and she says, Pinter Ranawat. I wonder if he's related to that guy I dated, Peter Ranawat. Oh, it must be like Smith over there, Jerry says. George asks Jerry, come on, make the call. Elaine's like, what call? I'm setting him up with Nina Stengel. Oh, Elaine recognizes that name, the great conversation girl. The one you said could replace me. I was kidding when I said that, Jerry says. George is quick to be like, told me the same thing. So Nina answers the call, and George kind of leans in and confirms with Jerry that you never slept with her, right? And Jerry shakes his head. Uh-oh. Then George has some boo-boo tummy stuff happening. He says something's not sitting right. My take on the scene, here we see Elaine first tell Jerry about the invitation. I love that term. I think it's better than non-vite. And that Elaine also dated someone with the last name Ranawat. I also really like how JLD delivers that line about the great conversation girl and her possible replacement. And how George is like, man, he told me the same thing. Really funny moment. All right, next, it's 1 hour earlier in Monk's. George orders the Clams Casino. Get out of here. Chef recommends. So, of course, we're seeing this right after he says something's not sitting right. Clams in a diner. What is George thinking? The waitress walks away and George is like, I think she likes me. Sure. So how come nothing ever happened with you and Nina? He asks Jerry. Is there a problem with her? Is she a man? Are you? Jerry explains how they were just too compatible. Their conversations were too engrossing. How engrossing? That's when Jerry says, if we ever had a problem with Elaine, we can bring Nina in and not miss a step. George kind of laughs and asks, you don't have a replacement lined up for me, do you? Jerry just smiles. I have to say, that moment with Jerry smiling at him, really well done, Jerry. Good acting. Anyway, as I was saying, he says, we couldn't make the transition from conversation to sex. There were no awkward pauses. This excites George. I'm all awkward pauses. All right, fix me up. But then George realizes, oh no, she just saw me in my Timberlands, and that he's going to lose 2 inches if he doesn't wear them. So he's going to keep wearing them, no matter how silly he looks in every situation. The Clams Casino arrives and George eats one. Tastes a little funky. I'm sure it's fine. Next, we're in FDR's apartment 30 minutes earlier. Kramer is at FDR's party, and we see him give the look to Kramer right before he blows out his candles, the evil eye. And Kramer is all scared. Then next, we move to 10 minutes earlier on the street. The intro credits are rolling. So this is the quote-unquote beginning of the episode. George and Jerry are walking, and George is really feeling the day. He's happy to be alive, almost. Jerry notices his Timberlands. Yeah, he says, it's a whole new me. I'm up 2 inches on these babies. 5'8", 5'7". A woman walks out of a store and recognizes Jerry. He says, hey, Nina. And he introduces George to Nina. And they have kind of a mini moment looking at each other. Next, we're in Elaine's building, and it's 3 hours earlier. Elaine is getting her mail and sees a wedding invitation. She opens it and says, India? Yeah, right. I'm going to India. And the Seinfeld logo comes up. My take, once again, an Elaine scene, quote unquote, opens the episode. I love that. And that's the way to start an episode right, in my opinion. Next, we have these tag scenes, I guess, which to me are some of the best parts of the episode. We see 2 years earlier in Monk's, Jerry and Nina are on a date and she's explaining the internet. And he's like, what are you, a scientist? Oh, I gotta go. And she exits. What the heck is email? George and Susan walk in and they ask him, how was the date? Jerry says, great. I think she might be the one. George then tries to order fries, but Susan's like, George, baked potato. Huh? And he says, I'm sorry. Yeah, you can stuff your sorries in a sack, mister. So we know where he got that. It's from Susan. Kramer enters with a snowball. He's like, oh, it's really packing tight. He takes some water from Jerry's glass to put it on the ball and try to ice it up and make it harder. Then he spots his friend, FDR. He goes, oh, I'm going to nail him in the back of the head. And he exits. And then Elaine and Pinter walk in. They all greet her. Hey, Elaine. She goes, hi, let's go someplace else. Okay, Peter? And they both walk out. So yeah, it's great. 2 years earlier, we see pretty much the onset for a lot of these things. Jerry and Nina are on a date. Stuff your sorries in a sack. What happens to FDR via Kramer. And that Elaine and Pinter were actually an item. Then we move even further back, 11 years earlier. Jerry is moving into his apartment and Kramer comes out and greets him. Oh, Kessler, right? No, it's actually Kramer. Jerry tells him that he just ordered some pizza if he wants to share. Oh no, Kramer says, I couldn't impose. Hey, we're neighbors. What's mine is yours. Oh, really? So it's all Jerry's fault that Kramer is constantly eating his food. And then we end the episode with the voice of Elaine saying, good night, Jagdish, which I think is a fantastic touch. All right, I'm going to take a quick break and I will see you on the other side. Hey everyone, Shivani here. I am using my ad time for this episode to share some valuable information. Given what happened this past Tuesday, I really almost choked on the irony that I'm covering the backwards episode of Seinfeld and really how it feels our country is moving backwards. But we don't have any choice but to move forward. And there are so many groups who are threatened by the future of this next administration. And for those communities, I just want to tell you that my heart hurts and I will do all I can in my power to help and protect those who do not have a voice and whose voice will probably get more and more silenced as this next administration makes the changes that they have threatened to do. So in that spirit, I wanted to mention some resources for one of those communities who will no doubt be attacked as we move into the next year and beyond, and that's the queer community, a community that is rightfully fearful, feeling hopeless and threatened. If you or someone you love is feeling suicidal, please call 988 or visit 988lifeline.org to chat with someone in person or online. The Trevor Project for LGBTQIA+ youth can be contacted at 866-488-7386 or visit thetrevorproject.org for gender-affirming and queer-friendly support. More resources can be found at inclusivetherapists.com/crisis. That's inclusivetherapists.com/crisis. And these resources include where to call if you feel unsafe. They are known as warm lines who do not call the police. As I said, we have to move forward, and no matter what certain groups preach, the marginalized communities in this country exist, and they aren't going anywhere. And we're back. There were plenty of extras in this episode. I wanted to mention a few things. The inside look, they talked about, again, the Betrayal by Harold Pinter, the play that takes place backwards about an affair. So the whole structure is based on that play. The director, Andy Ackerman, talks about how in this last season, finance really wasn't an issue because they were the number one show and it was known this was their last season. And so he kind of jokingly asked for an elephant. Hey, we're going to India. Let's ask for an elephant. And they took him seriously. So that's why an elephant appears in this episode. Pretty incredible. Like I said before, JLD was just so in love with her Indian look, and like I said, she's like, I think this should have been Elaine's look for the entire series. She loved wearing everything. And I just thought this was a funny comment. She says, it was before Madonna ever made it popular, so stick that in your pipe and smoke it. I'm like, ooh, do JLD and Madonna have beef? Certainly sounded like it. Heidi Sweetberg was also interviewed, and she said that, by the time that she reappeared in this episode, she had cut her hair very short. So that is a very scary wig. That's how she describes it. She was thrilled to come back, but she wasn't so thrilled about that wig. And that wig, if finance wasn't an issue, they could get a freaking elephant. Couldn't they have gotten a better wig for Susan? It's just like a simple bob, a blonde bob. And that is a scary wig. It looks like it's made of straw. Oh, and I'm so excited to report in the deleted scenes, this is where vegetable lasagna reappears. Okay, so after Elaine tells Nina that she's locked up her secret in the vault with, her sleeping with Jerry, she's trying to avoid talking to Nina anymore, of course. So she says, I'm going to take a nap. She turns and grabs a pillow of the guy next to her. And he's like, hey, that's my pillow. And he recognizes her and she recognizes him. She goes, vegetable lasagna? And he goes, oh no. Oh, such a fun moment. So back when I met him in Stratford, Ontario, he told me about this. But when I talked about it in the episode where he first appeared, I couldn't remember which episode he reappeared in. And I was so excited in the deleted scenes. I'm like, this is where vegetable lasagna comes in. So super fun deleted scene with a nice callback to vegetable lasagna. And I just wanted to mention a fun fact, for me at least. This episode aired on my husband's 25th birthday. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. All right, moving on to my favorite Elaine moments. Captain Obvious here, but every single Drunk Elaine moment. I can't pick just one moment. It's all of it. Every single second of both Drunk Elaine scenes. That's my favorite moment. A non-drunk Elaine moment, I like when she agrees to be Ellen Mischke's best friend. I like the, all right, I guess. Very relatable and very funny. And my final notes for the episode. I think this is an incredible episode, so creative, and it still works to this day. I don't think, unless I've missed something, I don't think this has been done ever again in any kind of a show. So it really is something special. Apart from the India bashing, I do love how accurate they are with the Indian outfits for both the ladies in this episode. So well done. Kramer's storyline, I have to say, It's pretty bad. I'm not at all enamored by, oh, the lollipop he has keeps getting bigger. I don't give a shit about the birthday wishes. It's like, what are you guys, 10 years old? What the fuck is this? It's so not interesting. I think they really did a disservice to Kramer by not having him go to India with them. How fun, all 4 of them in India together. And they could have made that work since basically Nina has no role in India. I think she has like 2 lines of dialogue. And like I said, in that scene where they're all arguing in the Indian temple, she's not even a presence. So they really could have made it work. Where Nina doesn't even go. Maybe George dumps her, but he's still mad at Jerry. He's still mad about the betrayal. And Kramer going on the trip really could have worked because maybe he was looking to escape the bad mojo of that dumbass FDR birthday wish. He can leave the country and maybe get some spiritual guidance in India. I feel actually bad for Michael Richards that he didn't get the experience of being in India with all of them. I mean, whatever, fake India, but you know what I'm saying. I just think it could have really worked with all 4 of them there. As I've said on this podcast many times, when all 4 of them are together in the same storyline, that's when the magic happens. And while it's for the sake of the story and the tribute to the Harold Pinter play, The Betrayal, I still can't get over Jerry doing this to George. I know these are selfish people and that's why we love them. And look, it's not like they're deep in a relationship. It's not like Jerry slept with Susan while George is, engaged to her, but it's still a super shitty thing to do. And I'm totally on George's side for being so pissed at him. Seems like they just forget about it after this episode. Nothing lingers. I mean, I do like the angle of Jerry though, being super apologetic. I mean, I think that is genuine. I mean, he says sorry so many times, but all of those sorries get stuffed in a sack according to George. So I guess it's all for naught. This may be the best Elaine episode of the series. I might have to declare that as well. JLD gets to shine in so many ways, and it's just, like I said, perfection. A big part of it is acting drunk. Like I said before, is not an easy thing to do. I think you see it just done in stereotypical ways in so many shows and movies, and that can be funny. But she takes it to a drunk level not seen very often. It's like buzz. It's like 2 levels above buzzed. It's like, okay, I've had too much, but I'm not sloppy yet. Bravo, JLD. Bravo. And I think that's all I can say about The Betrayal. Please be sure to follow the podcast on social media. On Instagram, it's at Hot Heavy Elaine. On TikTok, at Elaine Bennis Podcast. And if you'd like to email me, please do at elainepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.